Welcome to Let Him Cook, episode 2. Nigel, we got 2 games under our belt in the 24-25 season. First, we're going to go to a former Cyclone, probably the most notable Iowa State basketball player at the moment, former Iowa State basketball. Tyrese Haliburton, bit of a slow start to the season, but had a hell of a game against the New York Knicks on, was it Saturday or Sunday?
It was Sunday. He had 35 points, 14 assists. Just dirty. I don't know what's in the water in Indianapolis, but I need some of it because he was just on one. I don't know what it is too about. He has such a Reggie Miller effect, and I'm not just talking about his frame, 6'5", light skin and skinny, but nonetheless, it just seems like, the Garden, whenever he's playing that team from the Garden, doesn't matter the location. You saw him in Game 7 last season. That's when he's playing his best basketball. So just wanted to give Tyrese a quick shout out, man, because he had an eventful weekend hanging out with someone from enemy territory. So I'll let you take this away.
Well, so here's the thing. He was courtside at Hinkle Fieldhouse. It was him, his girlfriend, and Caitlin Clark sitting courtside, living it up, laughing a lot. I don't know if it's the best look for the Cy-Hawk rivalry to be, living up in your free time with Cyclones and Hawkeyes intermingling. I think it's a bad look for the brand. That's all I'm going to say.
I will say, though, I think Indianapolis as a city is trying to brand them together. Yeah. Just being Midwest kids. Then you go to Iowa together. You go to Iowa schools. And then you end up in Indiana. It's like their entire life story has been in the Midwest. So, for a market that is Indiana, I don't know if you guys have been in Indianapolis. Not much going on over there, right? Sure. So this is all they got. They gotta stretch their paper where they see it. So I see the vision, but it's like, as a Cyclone, it's like, come on, man, you can't be Michael Jordan hanging out with Isaiah Thomas. Where's the animosity? Those guys are 16. They still hate each other. Why those two are courtside? Awesome. Yeah, that's real ball, know. And why those guys are court? It's probably the AAU effect, but hey, it could be worse. He could be hanging out with Luka Garza or something. So if you're gonna hang out with a Hawkeye, probably best to hang out with Caitlin Clark.
Our generation is too soft, is what we're getting at here, Nigel. You got to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah, I would hope, but I think Tyrese is. Right. I don't think he looks back at his time at Iowa State as like. I think him and George Niang, while they both love Iowa State, I think they look at their time at Iowa State in two very different fashions due to circumstances, obviously. But I think that has a lot to play with it. Why Tyrese just kind of doesn't care.
Haliburton has a really interesting legacy because I think without a doubt he's probably been the best basketball player that has put on a Cyclone uniform in the last at least 25 years. Not while he was at Iowa State, but he's had more success in the NBA already than almost any Cyclone of my lifetime. So, but yeah, like you said, it's not like he was like setting the world on fire in Ames. We were a pretty lousy team for most of his tenure. Won that Big 12 tournament his freshman year, but that was kind of the peak of his. And he was the best player on that team. So yeah, it's a weird. Super happy for him, and he does represent the Cyclones everywhere he goes, and I love that because, like you said, he certainly doesn't have to do that. He wasn't like a George Niang guy that just had, 4 years here and, had a lot of success. So it's cool that Haliburton still reps Iowa State as hard as he does. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I just feel like he had a weird career. Like for being the best guy in the league from Iowa State, like that's the only notable name when I'm telling, a random person at work about Iowa State or like who else went to your school, Brock Purdy and who else? It's like Tyrese Haliburton. Like, oh, okay. Like if I pull up, I don't know, Lindell Wingington out of my ass, it's not going to have the same effect. They're like, dog, what are you talking about? And Lindell was a baller, but it just says, some people got that star power, man. And it shows not only off the court, with the eyes he can attract, hanging out with Caitlin and whatnot, but also just on the court, man. Pound for pound. I did want to ask, I saw it early on, you were only 9-10 games into the NBA season. What do you think about the Pacers, given that Winston and I believe Isaiah Jackson, I get him and his brother mixed up, Ian Jackson, but Isaiah Jackson, they both tore their Achilles. Yeah. Do you think the Pacers make the Eastern Conference Finals again?
I mean, they kind of made it last time with the benefit of other teams getting injured. I mean, like it's hard for any team to be successful without, some teams get the injury bug. And then when it comes to playoffs, It's like, well, it's kind of too late to tell. I think getting injuries this early in the year, you can kind of learn how to play without certain guys and kind of cover those gaps. And also like Benedict Mathurin, like Haliburton had 35 and 14. Benedict Mathurin was the leading scorer in that game. And I think the Pacers really missed him in the playoffs last year because they needed because if Haliburton was having an off night, they just didn't have the scoring to keep up with the Celtics. And then, of course, when Haliburton went down, it was over. But I think Mathurin...
If you want to beat the Celtics, you need wing depth. And Benedict is that. That's why they have him in Nesmith. But I'm just curious if is that going to lead to maybe a February trade just for some wings, some bigs? I don't know. I'm just the Pacers situation. I mean, Tyrese is Tyrese. That's where I was getting at. But I'm curious to think if they still have enough gas in the tank to make the playoff run they made last year.
Yeah, I hope so. Because like you said, the more eyeballs that Haliburton has, the more eyeballs Iowa State has, and that's good for us. One last thing before we get into the games, that I just want to briefly mention, Nigel. And I saw this guy, and you probably did too. Like on TikTok, it was like he had like a high school highlight tape. He has one arm, and he currently plays for the Austin Peay Governors, who beat Butler. I don't know if it was the same game that Tyrese and Caitlin Clark were at, but it was at Hinkle Fieldhouse. So the coach is also dressed in head-to-toe Army uniform. And I was like, oh, he's probably like a former veteran. It was Veterans Day yesterday.
He's not a veteran?
Not a veteran.
Dog.
Has no former military training. But so the thing, and then I was like, well, why the hell is he doing it? Austin Peay's campus, the team he coaches for, is like 13 miles away from a major Army base. Right. And like a lot of the kids that go to this university are like military kids. And so it's all kind of like, that's just the kind of community that this place has. But it's just a crazy team. And then they beat Butler. They should be a pretty good team. I think they're in the Ohio Valley Conference. But going back to, it's Emmanuel. Let me pull it up here. Hansel Emmanuel.
Yeah.
He was born in the Dominican Republic. Right? Yeah.
Oh, there's from the Bahamas.
Born in the Dominican Republic. And when he was like 5, he had a wall fall on his arm, and he was trapped there for 2 hours. It's an incredible story. And to start the season, he's averaging 9 points and 8 rebounds. So, I mean, it's truly incredible. And then they go into Hinkle Fieldhouse, which is a good, I mean, that's a tough place to play. And then for a mid-major team to come in and upset them, it's just something to keep an eye on. If it's a late night, as people know, I will watch just about any basketball game. So here's my invitation to watch some Austin Peay basketball in the near future on ESPN Plus.
I don't know if our fans know, but Dylan's out here watching current day Villanova, but like post Jay Wright era Villanova. So that's how down bad my boy is over here. He's my brother's starving.
I got a little bit exposed today. Finished work, had an HFR, finished my story, had about 30 minutes left, and I was like, the group chat was popping off, and so Tom Turner was watching Villanova, St. Joe's, and I was like, what the hell, I'll turn it on. Next thing I know, I'm getting recorded and put online for watching a standalone Big Five Philadelphia matchup. Great game, by the way. St. Joe's pulled it out. Villanova's 1-2. The Kyle Neptune era is off to a tough start. But no, it's hoop season, man. I know football's still going on, but I'm in complete hoops mode right now.
Yeah, no, it takes a lot of me. It takes a lot to drag me back into football once basketball starts. If I'm being completely honest, even with Iowa State to a certain degree, like I'll still, check the score, turn it on the TV sometimes, but I'm not as intensely screaming at my TV like I was, Cy-Hawk week. So there's definitely a mood switch come the last 2 games of the regular season and eventually bowl season too as well. But hey man, I got to commend you. I do because I love basketball, but there comes to a point where it's like I would only watch that game if I had money on it, and if I have money on it, I probably should call that number.
Yeah. Yeah. When you place that bet, they say, hey, you need help. This is not, don't bet on a 4:00 Villanova game in November is what that tells you.
And not just any Villanova game, post Jay Wright Villanova. Yeah. We are not the same. Like, I pray for those students, man, to go from Jalen Brunson to the current state that program's in right now. Get well soon.
It's not looking good. Nigel, let's talk some Cyclone hoops here. So since our last podcast, we've got the Mississippi Valley State game, and we've got the UMKC, the Roos. Let's start with Mississippi Valley State, and let's start with the starting lineups, because I was a little bit surprised with Milan Momcilovic coming off the bench to start the season. What did you make of that? Obviously, he started against Kansas City. I think TJ's still kind of tinkering with lineups, but did that surprise you to see Milan coming off the bench in game one?
Yes and no, just because I knew that in the beginning of the year, building up to the season, TJ had mentioned how Curtis was one of the better, more improved returners of the big four. And so I guess I thought maybe Milan hasn't been shooting the best. Maybe that's why. I know Curtis is a senior, so maybe TJ was just trying to, test the water, see how he would do in the starting lineup. And I'm not going to say he did bad, but after yesterday, I've made up in my mind, if Curtis Jones continues to come off the bench, I think he can win Big 12 six man of the year without a doubt. Like, I think he can have that Serge Jabari Rice effect that Texas had a few years ago. It just makes more sense to have some sort of weapon off the bench, because once we get to Maui, it's not gonna be like, oh, we're gonna play everyone down to Conrad. It's gonna be let's narrow this thing down to 7-8 guys, and these guys are gonna play heavy minutes. So I think it was just it was an eye opener for fans that Curtis. I don't know if it's the mental aspect of being able to see visually the game and the flow before, because you and I talked about the flow of yesterday. It was not the best offensively, but hey, maybe he saw that, and maybe he saw alleys and opportunities to pick at, and clearly it showed. He was getting to the basket. He was also hitting shots. So I just feel like he's able to kind of take in the game for a second, and then 5-6 minutes in, now go make your impact. And that impact is always going to be bigger than what he can do as a starter. So it's not always a bad thing. A lot of people come off the bench and finish games. Look at guys like Jamal Crawford. I think Curtis Jones can have that type of impact for this team, and he had it last year. So, if your sixth man is making the most improvement from a team that made the Sweet 16, I love that, because it just means your weapon just got better, because everyone knows about your starters. Like, everyone's worried about your starters, but when everyone's a little tired 5-6 minutes in the game, because how hard Iowa State plays, look who's coming off the bench, a killer. So I personally, I understand like playing with the lineups for these games that, regardless of the opponent, Iowa State will find a way to pull away. But definitely, I think yesterday was kind of the nail in the coffin on should we not start Curtis, even though he's been great the entire offseason.
Yeah, I think it's something ultimately that probably should be left up to Curtis Jones. I think you give him the option, but I think we've seen enough of film and tape to be like, he's just really good off the bench. Like you said, I don't know if he's got the microwave badge. I think you can just kind of plop him into a game and he's hot. Like, he just kind of starts with a hot hand. He's got a bunch of confidence in his game. He doesn't really force anything. He just kind of lets the game come to him. And I think the difference with Momcilovic, I think it seems like it takes him a while to warm up into a game and to ease into a game. And I think that's why starting him makes even more sense, to let him kind of get the flow and then get to his spots, especially on offense, and kind of pick defenses apart. So to me, it just seems like, and I'm fine with, like, Curtis Jones led the team in scoring coming off the bench against Kansas City. So I don't think it's an indictment on his game at all. He could lead the team in scoring as a sixth man and honestly be considered our best player coming off the bench. And like you said, to be a Jeremy Roach or a DeJuan Harris or an LJ Cryer and you get guarded by Tamin Lipsey or Keyshawn Gilbert for the first 5 minutes, and then they finally get subbed out, and then, oh, look who's coming in, Curtis Jones. Hell, I mean, that sucks.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
To like think,
God.
now I have my break, and now here comes Curtis Jones, who's going to lock me up, and now I'm going to have to guard even harder because he's going to drop 20 points. So it's a good problem to have.
Exactly. And when you bring up Milan too, like I think whatever it may be, it just seemed like maybe psychologically, maybe coming off the bench, it kind of messes with him. Even if he's not openly having a problem with it, maybe it's harder for him to find the flow. Because let's be honest, I mean, I don't think Milan's ever not started in his life. And he started his freshman year for one of the best teams in the country.
Right.
So to then your sophomore year, and we know a lot of players are, it's not uncommon to run into a sophomore slump. So maybe, I don't know, maybe that's just more time to overthink as opposed to kind of just be, secure and not have to worry about, oh, well, I didn't lose a spot. My role's not changing this year in a year where we're supposed to be better and everyone's supposed to get better. So I think they're both better in their last year roles. And I think that was the biggest takeaway from last night. Because I mean, in games like this, there's not much to take away. I know you and I hate to see when the game is close, 10 minutes, like it's still 11-11. Like, all right, let's stop playing around now. Let's speed it up, guys. But I mean, nonetheless, like I think for Keyshawn having a remotely off night, for Tamin having a remotely off night, that's when Curtis is going to be needed. Tamin can shoot a lot better than he could as a freshman, but he's no Steph Curry.
Right.
Keyshawn is a great shooter in spurts, but he's not always the most consistent. So that's Curtis's job, is to come in and, help when help is needed. And yesterday, it's so hard to, with the trajectory of this year, it's so hard to be Iowa State and be like, guys, we got Auburn, Houston, Baylor, Kansas on the schedule. But you know who we need to come ready for?
Right.
Kansas City on Veterans Day. I mean, that's going to be a contest. No, it's like, if I had to play basketball on a Monday against a team that is just so, respect to Kansas City because they held their own. Like I'm not saying they're beneath us, but I mean, come on, like from a name value, if we lost, we'd be cooked right now. Like it would be bad news. But no, I at the end of the day, I just think everyone is better in last year's roles. I think the best addition of the year was Deshaun. Like I think Jackson has been a huge addition to us, and Jefferson has done his thing. I like that, even though he didn't make a three, he's not afraid to shoot one. So he didn't give me the spacing anxiety that I had initially, because I didn't know how much of a level 1, level 2, level 3 level guy he was. So I was just worried him and Jackson, if they start them together, like, are they going to just clog up the paint for guys like Tamin and Keyshawn? So I'm glad he's able to stretch the floor and be confident just to shoot one, because you got to see one go in, obviously. So you never will until you shoot one. So I was glad to see just solid production out of a few guys, because not every day it's going to be everyone's night. Yeah.
And going back to full circle to the starting lineup, I think that's what surprised me most was Jefferson starting. I thought we would probably go small ball, put Milan at the 4 and then Curtis at the 3. And coming off, a summer where Jefferson had surgery, I didn't know if he would be kind of on a minutes restriction to start, especially like you said, against some of these teams early in the season. Let's get him 15, 20 minutes so he is up to speed and conditioning wise, but we're not going to push him to the max. It looks like he's good to go. I mean, that's what starting him would signal to me, that there's really no lingering issues with that surgery. It's such a change of pace to see post players as big, like strong as Jackson and Jefferson are, because we've seen, Otts go after guys like Hassan Ward and Oshan Oshuni and Jazz Coons. Just
these
like guys that are really tall and lanky and can, block shots. But in terms of boxing out or just physically having a presence down low, we haven't really seen Otts have guys like that yet. So that'll be something, especially during these games, that I'm really plugged in on to see just how we kind of use both those guys in the post. because especially against Mississippi Valley State, kind of an ugly start to that game, we were kind of playing through the post. And I don't remember, as an Iowa State fan, the last time we've really ever done that. Even when we had guys like George Niang and Maurice White, they were more kind of like guard, point forward. And that's how we wouldn't play through the block with them. We would play, bring them up 30 feet away from the basket and let them be a mismatch. So it's interesting to see. It's been a while since we've had big men who can play like this, that, there's 12 seconds left on the shot clock, lob it into them and see what they can do.
Yeah. And honestly, it's about time. Like I was hoping that, in a college basketball ecosystem, with you still have to worry about people who aren't in your conference, like people you're going to run into in the tournament, i.e. we're going to see him in the regular season, but Hunter Dickinson, these star big men that are old, can bang, pause, and they're solidified in the game. It's so important, and I think that was something we kind of lacked a bit outside of Hassan, is rim protection and just a presence in the paint. Like I don't feel like, I love Rob to death, don't get me wrong, like great player, did a lot for the university, great guy to just talk to, but he was lacking in some areas, and that's okay. Like not everyone's gonna be Greg Oden in college. Right. That's completely fine, but it just feels like he's able to give us a bit more of a scoring threat from the interior, which is going to be huge for shooters like Curtis and guys like Heiss, who got a lot of minutes yesterday, and Milan too. So I just think he's going to add a different element that last year no one was even thinking about with us. Everyone was just like, let's just trap the wings, let's take away first pass, and that's pretty much our kryptonite. They can't guard the three, so let's chuck them up. I think if we can put those narratives to bed quick, I think we'll be all right.
Yeah. And again, it's hard to be critical about these games. Iowa State struggled from three against Mississippi Valley State. Missed some open ones too. Like a lot of them weren't, like we weren't forcing 3-pointers. It didn't feel like, to me at least. But just like missed some open ones. 5 for 21 is what they shot in that first game. Like you said, I think Momcilovic especially, and I don't know if it was coming off the bench and just trying to get used to that, but it looked like he couldn't really find his shot. And even against Kansas City, he had some opportunities when we were kind of making runs to really blow the roof off, and they missed, by an inch. And right. So that's something that gets figured out. I feel like that's something that you see a lot in the early season. And again, like you said, Hilton was doing its best. But it's so hard to get like a real feel for these games, because you aren't, like, the fans aren't getting up for this game like a Big 12 conference game or a big non-con opponent like Marquette. So you do just kind of have to create your own momentum and your own offense, and you can't really rely on a super amped environment like they can in January and February. So, but like I said, hard to be too critical about these first two games. Is there anything that you've seen that you're like, hey, we got to clean this up before Maui?
Yeah, definitely just offensive flow. Like things can't look as choppy as they did yesterday. And honestly, again, I think it's just like lack of urgency. I don't want to say TJ's teams lack urgency, because they don't, but I just think out the gate, we got to get better at that. Because I think if we can punch teams in the mouth first, we'll be in a lot better position to win games. And I don't know if that's essentially going to come with, I built two theories in my head. Either TJ, and I brought this up in the group chat. No one seemed to agree, but that's okay. I'm going to let the people know. But I saw Louisville's new head coach walking around campus. And again, I feel like every coach should be doing this for these early games. If you're not playing in the Champions Classic right now, or you're not, having a Saturday primetime game like Houston and Auburn did on Saturday, you have to get involved with kids. You have to make them feel special. Like, hey, are you coming to the game? Like, no, don't even ask. Just say, you coming to the game? Like you already expected to. Like, I think if TJ could get more interactive early with kids around campus, I think you could see a bit more energy. Who knows? And then, who knows? Maybe just, the players walk to the gym. It's cracking. It's sold out. You sold out the open season game against Kansas, like second season game of the season against Kansas City. Like that means something to players too. I think, students at times can kind of make it about them, although they're not playing anybody, so I'm not going to go. And it's like, that's not the right attitude to have. I feel like you show up, no matter who they're playing, they're going to get the angst to want to show out for you guys. So I think, and again, I think that starts with TJ. If he shows that he cares, people are going to show that love back. Or TJ could play Auburn or Houston first week of the season. Now, I know a lot of our fan base would be shaking in their boots at that type of opportunity, but it's going to get eyes on us earlier. And I think it just does you a solid before Maui. I don't want Maui to be the first time we see some real dudes. You know, it'd be nice to, like, Houston and Auburn have such an advantage. They played each other before Duke, Kentucky, Kansas, and Michigan State played each other. That's huge. Like, it just shows that teams have the potential to do this. They just need to want to be able to do this. And again, you can try to, you know, whether it's beef up and try to get as many people as you can out to these lower competition games, or you beef up the competition and make it a no-brainer for people to tune in. You know what I mean? So I feel like those are two good solutions, maybe, so we don't have so many slow starts to these random mid-majors. But again, it also could be just they need a kick in the pants in the film room, and that might be what they're receiving, today. So who knows?
The one thing, and I think I said this in the group chat probably too, but like the difference between us and Louisville right now, I know Louisville historically has a very good basketball program, but like I would guess the majority of students at Louisville couldn't name 3 basketball players on their team because they're all new. I mean, they're a whole new team. They're a new head coach. Like, I think Pat Kelsey's out there hustling because he's like, people forgot we can be good at basketball because they really haven't been since Pitino left. So,
and I get it. Context matters in that. When I bring up Louisville, like I'm just saying maybe that'll work for us. Who knows? But go on.
Yeah, I think Iowa State students should know what to expect. And I agree. Like, God knows if I was a student, I'd be waiting an hour and a half in line to get in against University of Missouri, Kansas City. But I think it is harder to appeal.
That $5 ticket is selling.
It's harder to appeal to just kind of your casual student that, they'll go to the big games. It's hard to sell the ruse on a Monday night in November, especially when a lot of people are still in football mode. Couldn't be us. And the other thing about scheduling like a big name, one, the other school wants to have to do that with us. Like, it's a mutual thing. And Iowa State has been very good, especially last year, but during Ox's tenure throughout. But I think we're still not quite on the same radar as, say, a Houston or an Auburn, and especially the Champion Classic. I mean, almost every single one of those schools is a blue blood. So I think that almost might be more about, hey, are we going to really convince North Carolina to come to Hilton Coliseum in the second week of November? That might be a hard ask of North Carolina. So I just don't know if those opportunities.
It doesn't have to necessarily be North Carolina. It doesn't have to necessarily be North Carolina.
But just a big name. Yeah.
Well, okay. Let's not Marquette, but someone in the top 25 that is like a Marquette. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like Creighton. I think Creighton would be a great. Yeah.
Like somebody. I mean, let's try. Like, if we knew the attempt was there, I wouldn't be that like, oh man, we could have. Like, I know the effort's there. There's not much to say about it, but because it's not being told, like this is a common theme that I try to. I'm gonna be honest with you. The friends I had in college compared to me were the casuals you're talking about. It's the kids that are only going to tune in to the Kansas, the Baylors, like the big games we are in. Like when Caleb Grill had 29 against UNC, my whole group chat was buzzing. But when they're playing, God, I don't even know who they played. Like I literally like tune these games out after they happen. I want you to know they're so in the back of my head. I don't even recall who we play at the beginning of the year, but North Dakota or something. No one cares about that. So I just feel like if we're gonna do one of those, let's do one. Let's do the first game, get it out the way, okay, and then come on, let's go try something. Because it sucks as a actual like a big Cyclone basketball fan to have to really pitch why people should go when it's common sense, But you got to give the people what they want. They want to play big names. Iowa State's a big name at the end of the day. It's a Power 4 school. So we have to act like one in the preseason. And the way these bigger teams are moving, that's what everyone's doing. Like everyone is playing guys earlier. So they have, hey, when come tournament time, none of the seeding is messed up. Because we talked about last year how skewed we thought the seeding was. No one wants those issues this year. So they're trying to separate themselves from the pack. And it would be awesome. I know it's probably not probable for Iowa State to do it in the next few years, but it would be awesome if we could at least try. And if we could pull something off, let's go for it. Like a Creighton or somebody. Let's just give it a shot, please.
I would also love, and I don't know if they'd ever be willing to do it, but I think we've gotten to the point where Fred Hoiberg and Nebraska came to town. I think most Iowa State fans, especially with Otts being as good as he is, have kind of turned over the Fred Hoiberg page. I think Fred would get an ovation. I think it would just be a super cool moment. And also, I think we beat Nebraska. So,
first of all, yes, we would beat Nebraska. Second of all, Ames High School would pull up in school buses. Yeah. Okay, yeah. It would be something like that. Let's just get like in that. If that's game 2, dog,
that'd be sick.
Like we're back and coming off 2 football losses. Us as football fans, we don't have the highest morale right now. So let's be real. Let's be very transparent as Iowa State fans. We're not the happiest football fans right now, okay? So maybe we need something to take our mind off of the pain that has been the last 2 weeks, okay? Yeah. So I'm just saying, let's just try it out. I understand you're playing devil's advocate for TJ, and I get it. He probably is thinking that way. But wouldn't it be awesome?
It would.
That's it. There we go.
The one I was really trying to get to Mississippi Valley State. Life happens, couldn't make it. My parents did go, and I called my dad before we started this podcast, and I was like, is there anything that I'm missing that you saw in person? My parents have been to both the first 2 games. And he said one thing that stood out to him is he feels like from a standpoint of energy, we don't have a Rob Jones. We don't have a guy that is just constantly on the court, picking guys up off the court, running down every loose ball. He says the intensity is just a little bit lacking, and that's something I honestly haven't picked up on much, but I think that is something that's easier to pick up in person, just hearing kind of the body language and what's going on out on the court. That's something to me, and I don't know if, maybe Jackson can get to it at some point in the season. He can be that guy, but as I'm thinking about it, I think that has to be Tamin Lipsey. If you're going to be the leader of this team, I think you have to lead. He hasn't been a vocal leader, at least not from the outside looking in. And I think now is his opportunity to be like, hey, I'm going to be the mouthpiece of this team, and I'm going to be the pit bull that starts shit and, follow my lead. And I might not lead the team in scoring, but in terms of effort and in terms of intensity, I think that's something that someone has to step up and do, because I think Rob Jones did it, at least for the last 2 years.
And I'm glad you brought up the last part of the last 2 years, because the thing about Rob was he's a role player at the end of the day, like starter or not, he's a role player. But the first year he was here, he was a wet noodle.
Yeah.
Take that with what you will. Yeah. But I think that whoever the energy guy has to be, it has to be someone coming off the bench. The reason why Tamin Lipsey is not going to be a vocal leader is because pit bulls don't speak English, Dylan. Got one at home. He don't speak English. Rocco does not speak English, and that's okay. But he's still a pit bull, and that's what Tamin. We know we're getting with him. Keyshawn, he brings energy. That's undeniable. But is it Rob Jones level? No, I think it's going to be someone's responsibility off the bench that takes in that role. And you don't necessarily have to be this big, gangly 5-man to be a Rob energy guy. I think Nate Heisey could be it. I think, perhaps if he gets some more minutes, Watson could be it. It's just it's probably going to have to rely more so on a bench guy to find an identity. And we know that's an identity that TJ can trust. So I think if you're a new player on this roster and you want to build some early rapport with TJ, the best thing to do is to try to take on that. I hope someone becomes aware of that issue early. And if it's not someone just figuring out on their own, I hope a coach points it out that we don't have that this year, but we do need it because it's a difference maker. So shout out to Scott Coon for pointing that out, because I'm glad, like you said, that's something it's really hard to pick up on TV because the energy in Hilton isn't there because of the opponent. It just is what it is. And then it doesn't help that we're not the best. For whatever reason, we got most of returners back and we can't shoot threes now at the same consistent rate. So it's a lot of what's going on? I don't know. It's an awkward phase. And I just feel like this is going back to my other point of, I think if we had an opponent that we had to prepare for earlier before Thanksgiving, guys would just be a little bit more dialed. And that's all we want early November. Like Caleb Grill last night for his respective school had 33 points, 8 threes. I don't know what about November basketball, but the guy loves it. He eats. And
if they played March Madness in November, Caleb Grill would be Naismith's Player of the Year. It would be incredible.
He would be a lottery pick.
Yeah.
No brainer.
Dalton Connect.
Exactly. So I just feel like, if they're able to, obviously we can't change the schedule in the middle of the year, but you got to deal with the bed you laid, you set. So I just feel like, I hope they definitely pick that up and someone is able to adopt that very quickly. Preferably someone who came off the bench and was, I don't know, maybe not getting a lot of minutes last night. Maybe like Mr. Watson. Who knows? What do I know? Hey.
I think in just TJ's style of basketball, the importance of a energy guy cannot be overstated. I mean,
it's crucial.
To play basketball as crazy people for 40 minutes, to bust their ass on defense as much as they do, to turn teams over as much as they do, to have as much effort as they do, you need just a constant optimist, a rah-rah, like someone just clapping all the time, saying, we got this. You just need a guy like Rob Jones. It's a necessity. And I think someone will step up. I'm just not sure who that is yet. And I think that's something I didn't really think about. You look at the box score every night and you look at the post players Iowa State had last year, and you think just in terms of statistics, Iowa State doesn't really have to replace all that much as long as these guys can rebound and get, combined 20, 25 points a game, we'll be fine. But in terms of energy and optimism and teamwork, I think that can't be understated in the style that Ox plays.
Without a doubt. And also, I do want to point out something funny I found on the bench yesterday was, I know Conrad just had shoulder surgery, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
When I tell you, he looked, and I zoomed in on some pictures, noticed it was the gray, just like very small font Iowa State basketball hoodie. But from afar, from the camera angle on TV, it looked like he was just in a t-shirt and some sweats. So he looked like an average Joe just on the bench, and he was the most animated on the bench. So someone who just had shoulder surgery is the most animated on the bench. And I know it's hard to compete with Conrad when it comes to animation, but that is a problem. Well, so it makes me realize how someone does need to pick up that identity this season.
I'm glad you brought up Conrad, because I think he does exactly that. But at some point, you kind of got to be on the court to be able to really bring it. But no, Conrad, as always, animated. Maybe he can medically redshirt. Can we get him one more year? Worth a shot. Worth a shot.
If not, get him as a GA just to have him with a clipboard doing the same thing. Love it.
We've seen Matt Campbell. I'm not even joking. We've seen Matt Campbell, like Kyle Kemp's on the coaching staff. I know Joel Lanning was like an assistant for a little bit. Just getting those guys that were part of the culture, I think that's really important to, keep them with your program. So when you bring in an 18-year-old, you can look to Conrad Holly and be like, oh, that's what these guys are about. Like, that's what makes these guys so good.
Right.
So you need a rah-rah guy on the court. I hope we figure that out. Yeah. The other thing I want to loop back to, talking about Auburn-Houston, and I said this in the group chat too, I think that game is probably more important to Iowa State than any actual Iowa State game we'll play. And I thought about this a lot last season too. There's no good way to prepare for Houston or Iowa State unless you play Houston or Iowa State. There's no way you can get your scout team defense to replicate what Iowa State or Houston does in terms of intensity and effort. I don't care how much those guys are busting their ass. There is something different about Iowa State and Houston. Well, Auburn already beat Houston, and now they know what to expect when Iowa State plays them. So now they have that step ahead come Maui to be like, we face these guys. We know what to expect. Like you said, I think that's a huge advantage that Auburn has, and I think they're a really good basketball team. I know UConn should get all the respect in the world, but I really think Auburn might be the best team in Hawaii when we play in Maui.
Yeah, and it makes the whole road to the championship if you look at it from a numbers point of view, it looks borderline impossible. You're gonna need some Hilton magic to travel for sure to get through that gauntlet. Because that's the thing that I forget about Maui is the championship game is on Blackout Wednesday for all my Midwestern folk. It's like it's so early on in the week, and then all the rest of the primetime games are after the holiday, or either they start on Thanksgiving. Right. So it has this like really isolated spotlight that I feel like none of the other tournaments have at times, because some of them are during the day. Most of the Maui games that are important are played maybe more on the later slate, I would say. Yeah. And then come that championship game, I mean, we've seen some legendary championship Maui games, and I just think getting to that point is going to be a very tough battle, and it's why it's like in retrospect, you do wish that, dang, I wish we would have gotten Creighton or Nebraska in here at some point just to get somebody worth you like the just you could possibly see them in March, get them in the building, play a straight up. Either we're on the road, they're on the road scenario, or at a neutral site. Who knows? I mean, we got Kansas City down the street. We got Des Moines. I just think if we make the effort, we're going to prepare our guys no matter what tournament we're in come Thanksgiving. So I can only hope that we're prepared by then. But it's just hard to when you're playing IUPUI next up.
Yeah. Sorry for the technical difficulties. A little bit of, technology. As you can see, we are not in the beautiful Wild Rose Casino studios, both shooting this one from home tonight. Like you were saying, Nigel, I think it's hard I think everybody's got their mind on Maui. And I think that's when kind of the real season starts. I hate to say that, but I think that's when you're going to get a lot of the fan base tuned in. Is in Maui, and they'll probably mention it during the game that Auburn played Houston. But for people that aren't super locked into college basketball right now, if Auburn comes out on a 10-0 run, 12-0 run, you shouldn't be too shocked. I mean, this is a team that has seen that defense, and I don't think they're going to be scared of us. I don't think our intensity or our physicality is really going to affect them the way that it would, say, in North Carolina, who's played Kansas. But like I said, I don't think there's a good way to prepare for Iowa State unless you play Houston. And Auburn's done that. So we'll see.
The thing Auburn can't do, though, is have a safe flight. My God.
Yeah, what the hell is that?
Are a reckless abandon in the air.
That's the other. I would have sworn. I was like, oh, Houston's going to kill these dudes. Like they're fighting themselves. Good luck trying to beat Houston. Like they're going to make you. Like there's going to be two Auburn players wrestling at mid-court if they can't get through a flight, and now they're expected to play Houston.
Well, then they show context of the game before. First of all, I have a lot of nerve actually talking about, high level teams playing crappy teams. Auburn belt to ass against who was it? I think it was some HBCU.
You talking about Vermont?
Was it Vermont?
They were up 75. They were up 75-25 against Vermont, who, by the way, and I knew you were going to do this. Vermont's not a bad team. They have run the America East for a decade, and they always make the tournament, and I always pick them to win because I love their style of basketball. I mean, they just shoot threes. They run. Anthony Lamb, for all you Vermont Catamount watchers, was a great player 5 years ago. But no, they whooped Vermont, and that's another Vermont is used to winning. Like a lot of these teams, like a Mississippi Valley State, all they know is how to lose. Vermont's probably going to win 25 games this year, and it takes a different level. Like Vermont thinks they're a good team and probably still does. It's hard to come in and just beat the hell out of that team like they did.
Yeah, but my point is, in that game, they're shooting the lights out. Again, I'm not too familiar with Auburn and their scout.
They can shoot. Is my scouting report.
Yeah, 21 was letting it burn, and then as I look into the mere distance, I see his teammate in the opposite corner,
Head down.
head down, shrugging his shoulders. Mad, mad. His boys are hooping. Like, man, I've never seen such lame ass behavior in my life. Like, if I ever see a Cyclone behaving like that on the court,
tough.
You're not wearing a jersey for the rest of the year. You're wearing a red shirt from Walmart. But my point is I wouldn't take that with a grain of salt. I think longer down the road, Auburn is a very talented team. But even if they say they kick us in the face in Maui, and that might happen, it may not. Who knows? I think that those early locker room issues don't die unless you really do some actual work on those.
Right.
And I know Bruce Pearl is not the best enforcer. I feel like he's more of a people's coach, a player's coach, more of let's just keep everyone at ease and let's keep everybody playing intense. If you got those types of fiery personalities that are kind of all about themselves, I don't know how good that works 40 games into the year. You know, that at some point a team like that might implode. So I'm not praying on their downfall, but it's just an early kind of foreshadowing thing that I think if something hits the fan later down the year, or maybe in Maui, who knows? I think we can't be too shocked because you just need to go back to those games that early in the year and you're bugging because my boy didn't swing the ball. He hit 8 threes. Let him cook.
And you played Vermont. That's it.
Yeah. No, the NBA is not looking at, how are your stats against Vermont? They want to see how you play against Iowa State, buddy. Yeah. So strap them Velcro shoes up and get ready. Now I want to play defense, man. I want to guard this kid. Getting all worked up. I'm sorry.
One last thing on Auburn, just talking about team chemistry. Ask North Carolina a couple years ago what two teammates not getting along can look like. I mean, you can go from a 1 seed.
Grill. That's what happens.
You can go from a hopeful 1 seed to a play-in team really quickly. So no, I think there's
Caleb Grill has a 30 burger in your mouth.
And people forget that Rob Jones had a great game. Caleb Grill gets a lot of love for that game. Looked like Kobe and Shaq. That is just one of the more unbelievable Iowa State games in recent memory. But
hey, guess what? No one thought we were going to win that game. It can be done, man.
That's true.
No matter the location, the Hilton Magic has to come. It has to.
Nigel,
they have to travel from Maui. They have to. I'm not. Y'all be easy.
I wish. One last thing I want to talk about that I've just been impressed by, some optimism, and I know who we're playing, but we have looked really good in rebound margin. We're plus 16 through 2 games, and Iowa State, even against bad teams, struggled to out-rebound them. And, you know, the way Iowa State plays defense, we turn the team over a lot. We force a lot of shot clock violations. So there are just less rebounds to be had when you play like Iowa State does. So we're not going to get a lot of total rebounds, but if we can get more rebounds than the other team, especially since they're more valuable because there's less of them when Iowa State plays, that can go a long ways in the terms of complementary basketball. And this almost feels like a podcast for Houston. I'm sorry I keep bringing them up, but I like Iowa State fans will say, you know, we don't need to be good at rebound margin. We're so good at turnover margin. Who cares about rebound margin? Houston is consistently top 10 in both. So I know it can be done. And I kind of wonder if that's the reasoning as to why Ott said, hey, like, you know, love Hassan Ward, love Jazz Coons, but those guys aren't 10 rebounds a game kind of guys. It might be a freak accident once or twice a year that they get 10, but Jackson and Jefferson can both get you 10, probably not every night, but a couple nights a year, you know, a couple times a month. Yeah. So I think that's just something to monitor, because if we can win the rebounding battle, we're going to win the turnover battle. And if you shoot better than 30% from 3, just statistically, that's a hard team to beat unless you're really making dumb decisions throughout a game.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Yeah, I think that's a huge difference maker, and I hope that can take us, you know, farther than it. Because, like I said, guys, we say all this, all the problems we may have at the beginning of the year. The reality still stands. It's Elite 8 or bust. Yeah. And I hate to put that pressure on guys who have never been that far in the dance, but it is what it is at this point. You know, we've seen the Sweet 16s are cute, but it's getting old. So I want to set us apart from the pack. And I think we have some great opportunities coming up that we can kind of, set the table for what can be a very special year.
Yeah. And we haven't covered either game. I think the first one we were favored by 45, something astronomical, and then didn't cover against Kansas City. But I will say
the refs they've got us on a few parlays. Well, you're not slick. We see you.
Vegas is certainly happy about it, but I think everything is going to plan so far. There hasn't been a thing where I have immediate pause about. One last thing I do want to mention about Kansas City and kind of talking about going into Maui, we saw an 8-man rotation, essentially. I know Noyes and Demarion Watson came in late in the second half there, but for the most part, we played with just 8 guys, the 5 starters, and then you had Curtis, Brant Chatfield, and Nate Heisey were the 3 main bench contributors. So interested to see, I think eventually we're going to be an 8-9-man rotation. Like I said, I would love to see Watson get some minutes, especially early in the year. Let him prove it. I think there's something to be said about his loyalty and seeing the highs and lows of this program over the last 3 years with Taman Lipsey. He's just a guy that has seen it all here. And I think, let him go out there and get 10 minutes a game, 12 minutes a game, especially in these games. I think, again, an 8-man rotation was kind of like, hey, this is probably what we'll have to do against Auburn. I just want to make sure all 8 guys can play, 25, 35 minutes a game. But I'm hoping next Monday against Indiana, Purdue, is it Fort Wayne or is it Uwe
I believe it's Uwe.
Okay. Are they? There was talks of them no longer being a D1 basketball team. Let me look this up so we don't get.
I heard they were having tryouts. So, and that's my problem, bro. Is we're playing. We're not only playing. Have you seen Shark Tale, Dylan?
It's been a while. It's been a while.
Anyway, Martin Scorsese, he's the big puff fish. He's like, there's whales, there's sharks, there's whale poo, and then there's you. Those are the opponents we are playing.
Yeah,
in the beginning of the year. It's not just bad teams. It's we're playing the manager squad right now. This is not okay.
It is Uwe Pui, and they're called that because their acronym is IUPUI. So I'm not even really being mean. That is just truly what their letters spell out. Then Mississippi Valley State very well could be the worst team in college basketball this year. If not, Uwe Pui will be right there with them at the bottom of Ken Palm. What it really is just figure your shit out, figure out the rotations, and the offense, I think, like you said, has to look smoother next Monday, especially going into Maui.
Without a doubt. And again, guys, I don't want the main takeaway from this episode to be wow, they just crapped on the bad teams.
Right.
We're not trying to do that. But it's just the harsh reality. And the only reason I'm so adamant about it this year is because so early on, other programs have proven, hey, just by a little scheduling, magic, you can get Carolina and Kansas week 1, Auburn, Houston week 1. These things can be done. Someone's going to lose, we know. But look, you're playing a great team. You're not going to drop off that much. And then you're going to go right back to playing Uwe Pui. So you're going to win by 90 the next game. Win or lose, it can't hurt you. It can only help you. So I just want to do that as we push on, as we continue to gain momentum as a program in TJ's era as a coach. I just hope it's something we can see in the near future.
And the other thing, it's not like on Selection Sunday, you're Michigan State would have been a 3 seed, but they lost in the championship classic to Kansas. No, that's not. I feel like a lot of these early non-conference games don't really get held against you unless you just get embarrassed like Baylor did against Gonzaga. And even then, the biggest takeaway from that was VJ Edgecombe putting Mark Few's kid just
put his face in his pants. Oh my God, violated that young man.
Oh, the best part.
I would have killed to have heard what Mark Few said to his wife before he went to bed. What do you say? You put your son in harm's way, and he got embarrassed on national TV. Mind you, no one watched the game, but he got embarrassed. It's the principle. He got embarrassed on national TV. It was
that happened at midnight Central Time. So if social media didn't exist, all of like 300 people would have seen it. But
I've been an urban legend.
They did ask Mark Few about it in the press conference after the game, and it was him and 3 of his good players. His son wasn't up there. And when the reporter asked it, all 3 of the players just kind of went like they all kind of leaned back or like went like just head to the dude. And Mark Few was just like, he was making a play on the ball. He just coach speaks his way through it, but man.
Yeah, he was making a play on a ball on his forehead.
Yeah,
so
got his Kodak moment in the worst way possible.
And then Gonzaga, again, they're another team that's had a very impressive schedule. They went and played Arizona State early. They played Baylor early. They beat the crap out of Baylor. So shout out to Gonzaga, because when Baylor loses, the world wins. But nonetheless, looked very good against Arizona State. I'm something I do want to talk about too. It's not going to be too quick, but I just love the number choices out of some people this year. Now with you having the ability to go 6, 7, 8, 9. Would love to see some Cyclones get creative too in the near future. But saw Khalif Battle from the Gonzaga. Yeah, bro's pulling out the Jay Crowder. Nasty. I like it though. I like it. You can tell you're dealing with kids who grew up playing NBA 2K their entire lives. Like they're like, I don't care. Give me whatever number. I'm gonna make it look cool.
Yeah, we got Luka Doncic's dumbass wearing 77 in the NBA. That one pisses me off.
He's out there. Works.
He's wearing a left tackle.
But there's a guy on the Celtics. He's their big man, number 88. He's from like Utah State or something. That's even worse, bro. 88 is terrible. That's more of a Celtics problem because all their jerseys are retired. Like that's the issue. Yeah, but nonetheless, Luka made that shit cool. Like he did that. He was a trailblazer, bro. He did that in 2018, boss. He made that look cool in 2018.
No, he didn't make it look cool. He's a chubby white dude wearing 77 on an NBA court. There's nothing cool about that.
I can take you to any AAU tournament. We can find one number 77 at the tournament, and that's the Luka impact.
And I hope Iowa State doesn't recruit that kid because I don't want it.
Well, there you go. Dylan Coon is anti-Luka Doncic. So,
anti-Luka Doncic. Have been, always will be. I'm a hater. I'm a full-time hater, Nigel.
Clearly. And then obviously, too, I wanted to, before we get going, Baylor bounced back against Arkansas.
They did. That was a big game for them.
Huge bounce back win. Arkansas is Kentucky in red this year. Just want to let you know. It's the same team.
Current Kentucky, what are we looking at? Down 46-37 to Nigel's Dookie Blue Devils. Uh-oh. Cooper Flagg, as advertised.
Oops.
That's a cold-ass white boy you got over there in Durham. So happy for you.
And look, I'll end with this. I only hope to God the Bulls tank because I'm not a Bulls fan, but I would love for him to be a 50-minute drive from my house.
That'd be sick.
Only a boy can dream. Who knows?
Hey, my Brooklyn Nets, they need to start tanking. I'd love to see Cooper Flagg on that side of Brooklyn.
We'll see. I think Utah is going to make a tough run at him just off of a marketing aspect. Yeah. Just their own. I think they've won like one game or something this year. So we'll see. I mean, hopefully Chicago's in the mix. I do hope for the city's sake. They need something. Right now, they have nothing. Yeah. So we'll see.
All right, man. We got Ooey Pooey, and then it's Maui, and then things really start to get rolling. We got Marquette in early December, and then blink of an eye, we got Christmas break, Big 12 schedule.
There we go. Also, we just gave y'all an hour of content off of two of the worst games maybe in college basketball. They were so bad, you probably couldn't even illegally stream the game. So shout out to us. We did.
Yeah. A little bit of technical difficulties. It might be closer to like a 57 or 58 minutes. We'll see what it ends up being. But
we roll with the punches.
If you love Cyclone Hoops, we hope you enjoyed the last hour. I certainly did. Nigel, is there anything you want to say before you get out of here?
Love you guys. Keep tuning in. Obviously, as the games get more important, we're probably going to be putting out more consistently. But I'm glad we had 2 games to talk about because it's a lot better to in these spurts be able to have a lot more content than just one game where we kill the other team. So again, just don't think we're giving up on you guys after week 1. We're back like we never left, and hopefully we have a great season. So let's get it.
all I got to say, Duke minus 5.5. Need it for my parlay. Please.
Con everyone, Con buy stock early.
All right.
Let's go.
Go Clones. See you guys.
Peace.